Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass Podcast, a show where we talk about movies and, well, more movies. I'm D-Man, joined by CP. Now, CP, congratulations on a successful Comic-Con trip.
Well, thank you for that. I don't know about you, but I'm still pretty tired.
Yeah, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about all the pros and cons and everything that happened this year, maybe a little bit, of juxtaposition of how it was compared to last year or previous years, since you've been to multiple cons. And also, we have a huge movie release to talk about this week, which we both saw together. So if you've been following us on social media, CP and I got to go to the movies together again, which is always a good time. We both put to
Yep.
use our AMC A-list passes. So shout out AMC. And we saw the movie Oppenheimer. So stay tuned later in this episode. Spoiler alert, we will be talking about Oppenheimer and we will be talking about it with spoilers. So just want to do that right at the top. So if you were hoping you were going to get the spoiler free review, that's not happening here. We're doing spoilers. So we'll make sure to clarify exactly when it is. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, you can go ahead and switch it off. But then remember to timestamp where you were. So you come back immediately after you see it and hear what we said.
Very true. Very true. Hard to argue with
So,
D-Man because that is flawless logic.
yes. CP. Now, here's the things for our shoutouts this week, because we were at Comic-Con. A lot of the comments and a lot of the shoutouts were in reference to our Comic-Con experience. So a lot of fire
Surprising.
emoji. Yeah, a lot of it was actually funny because Ivor knew we were at Comic-Con, and I think he messaged me on Thursday and he's like, "Where are the posts?" And he's like, "I know you're there. Like, bring the posts on." And then I don't remember if you saw his message, but he also messaged us about something, an
Yeah, he wanted us
announcement.
to get some details about if any announcements about a show. I did not see any announcements, Ivor, so I apologize. I did my best, but I could not find anything.
Yeah, what was he asking about? Like Lazarus, or it was something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I forget exactly what it was. But Ivor, we will continue to go through all of the announcements and details because it was a lot, and we're going to get into the scheduling. It's a real thing. So thank you guys though. And then Drucker actually hit me up directly. He DM'd me this time. He didn't tweet at me, and we'll get into that. But I don't know if you still tweet at people or what. But he DM'd me and he wanted to know what our thoughts were on Oppenheimer. So he had some of his own as well. And Drucker, as I mentioned, we will be getting into it. So CP, did you get any shout outs or any
A
comments or
couple.
anything on your?
My friend Christine messaged me and said she was jealous that we had Comic-Con pass, and yes, you should be very jealous. We're very cool, and you apparently are not. Um, my friend Jack messaged me. I actually posted a question to the audience. I ran across a Tamagotchi booth at Comic Con, and I actually posted like, "What is this?" 1999, and then my friend Jack hit me up and said, "Yeah, I actually bought two Tamagotchis for my kids. It's the perfect thing to keep them occupied during road trips." So that was a shocker to me. As much as things change, the world is still quite the same apparently as it was in 1999. And then have to thank Steph because every picture I posted with us with Mr. Daryl from Run DMC, she responded with double fire every time. So thank you, Steph.
I mean, they were great photos. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, at Comic Con, that's one of the big things is you're gonna take photos. There's all kinds of crazy things to see, and you got to make sure. I didn't realize this again. You learn things as you go, but I didn't bring an extra kind of portable battery pack. It's like going to like Disneyland. You got to make sure your phone's charged.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you can see the schedule and the programs. I mean, you can get a paper version, but I mean, most of what you're doing it's through phones because you get separated or your friends arrive, and you need your phone.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe bring a battery pack. That was interesting.
That was
So
very
yeah, and my
interesting.
sister, she also my sister messaged me too, and she said just have a great time. Hope you guys are having fun. So thank you.
And you said,
And
Steph, I'm having zero fun at all. This is awful.
no, I would never say that. So yeah, it was a great time. But we're gonna get into the details and talk about what exactly we got to see and experience and everything, and share maybe our favorite photos and some different stuff. So should be pretty cool. Now, before we dive into all that, CP, I do got to talk about something because this affects how we interact with our listeners/viewers, and that is that apparently Twitter is no longer Twitter.
Yeah, I woke
So
up to a message about it and was totally weirded out.
yeah, apparently it is now just X, which I don't even know if that's how you say it, but X, the letter X. And if you go to x.com, that's now where twitter.com points. So there's no twitter.com anymore, apparently. It just reroutes to x.com. They rebranded the entire company. And now this may not have taken effect for everybody yet, but I mean, it's done, like decision making wise. So you
Mhm.
might still look on your iPad or your phone or something and see the Twitter app, but eventually I guess it's going to be replaced with a giant X. And
Wow.
I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, being in marketing, it's one of those weird scenarios where I'm like, brands have equity, both good and bad, but they have a history and people associate certain things with that brand. And to rebrand your kind of core product is a little shocking. And
Well,
yeah, it just blows my mind.
well, you're the marketing guy. I think it's really weird in the sense that obviously over the last few years we've seen a number of Twitter clones pop up, most recently Threads. But the
Yep.
point is they're always compared to Twitter. And Twitter is the band-aids of that type of app. So it's very weird that they would want to completely move away from the Twitter branding.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a company that does kind of blow my mind. But I will say this. I don't know if it's just recently. I don't know if Elon Musk has even tapped into this, but recently his brand might exceed that of Twitter's. And he's banking on the fact that as long as he's still the owner and he's still there, it doesn't really matter what they call it. Right now, he's personally the one that's garnering all of that attention and stuff.
Well, the weird thing is, right, we saw Meta when it was formerly Facebook abandon the Facebook name and rebrand the overarching company as Meta. But this is kind of a different scenario, right? Facebook had gone through the whole Cambridge Analytics thing. It had been fined by a number of regulatory governmental agencies. It was kind of at an all-time low in terms of public opinion. So it seemed like the idea was, okay, we'll kind of push, the Facebook app and brand sort of to the side. We'll rebrand everything under the Meta umbrella because we are more than just Facebook. We're also WhatsApp and Instagram and all these other great social media tools. And we're trying to really build equity as this overarching company that does more than just that kind of damaged Facebook thing. But that doesn't really seem to be the case with Twitter. I mean, I know people have had their sort of falling out of love with Twitter over the last year or two, but the Twitter brand did not seem damaged with scandal in the same way that Facebook was with Cambridge Analytics.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying because Facebook or Meta is the umbrella company. Facebook is the core product.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't rebrand their actual product. Facebook is still Facebook and it still exists. They just kind of shifted the umbrella company, which basically, like you said, houses all those other brands to make sure that Facebook doesn't drag all of them down simultaneously.
Yeah.
So again, that would change if that happened today because Meta being the umbrella company, now you would just say Meta and they'd all be under the same thing. But they had an opportunity to do a quick rebrand and they took it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it worked. I don't know. But it is weird because when you change your core product, that's like, the best example I could probably ever use is just Coca-Cola. Like if Coca-Cola took their core product, Coke, and they're like, you know what? We're going to rebrand. We're not going to call Coca-Cola Coca-Cola. If you go to the restaurant and you look at the menu and you don't see Coca-Cola, you're probably going to ask, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to see Pepsi because they don't compete on the same menus. They compete for restaurants. So you're going to ask the server, like, oh, do you guys have Coke? And they're going to say, oh, you know what? We don't anymore. Coca-Cola discontinued it or they rebranded. And now we have, I don't know, some like, I don't know, you just name it like Rose Cola or something. I don't know. Doesn't
Yeah.
sound very cool, but whatever. And you would lose all that equity of your brand. Like the person would be like, "Oh, it is Coca-Cola. They just rebranded it. It's identical." And I would bet you would find a lot of people that would drink it and they'd be like, "It doesn't taste the same. It's not as good. I don't like it." Why? It's the exact same product, but it's the emotional connection they have with the brand. they don't connect with it anymore. That nostalgic feeling you get when you see the logo that's just been around in movies and media and posters and at restaurant menus and everywhere, you'd lose all that. And that's
Well,
why I'm not saying Twitter's Coca-Cola, but I am saying that it does have brand equity, and it's remarkable that I think they would trade all that in.
well, aside from the brand equity, there's also a verb directly attached to the Twitter brand, which is tweeting. So are we still going to tweet? Are we going to just X people?
I don't
Like,
know.
I don't understand how that's going to work. That's what confuses me.
Plus, I mean, I hate to say it, but when you're typing the letter X in a web browser, I think we know where that might all go. And I don't know if that, I mean, I'm not saying that's what will happen, but I mean, that's weird too. So, and then the last thing, just while we're on this topic, CP, and I bring this up only because our listeners, our viewers, this is literally happening in real time. This happened like hours ago. So, when the podcast comes out, your guys' apps might have already switched over. They might not have, but just keep an eye out so that we could still keep communication open with you guys. We'll still be there and we'll be on X. But the other thing was, I just want to get your opinion. Elon Musk said he wanted to make this the everything app. So he wanted people to shop in it, to chat in it, to make calls with it, to maybe do email, to do tweeting, social media. I don't know, all like the everything app. Now, I guess this is comparable to WeChat in China. I think it's WeChat, but I could be wrong. It could be like Weibo or I don't know, Weibo, something. Anyway, but the irony is like over in China, they may have that and it may be incredibly successful, but China also runs a pretty rigid government regime over there. So I think it'd be pretty hard to run a social media company without China having access to that data. And I would assume they would be in favor of it because everybody's doing everything in one place. It's not fragmented and you have to go find it. You're like, oh, it's all right here. So, I mean, that might make sense over there, but I would be hard pressed to think that we could get something like that here
Well,
because competition is just too great. Is anybody good at everything?
well, and I think that's what I was thinking. Is anyone that good at everything? And most notably, I think to Google, 5 years ago when they said, hey, we're going to directly compete with Facebook. Let's put out our own social media channel. We have the power of Google. We have the best programmers in the world. We have great marketing. We have incredible amounts of data on people. And it was a total flop.
Are you talking about Google Plus?
I am.
Did they get the plus at the end of their word first before all these streaming services?
I believe that they did.
Oh man, that's hilarious. I can't believe that, dude.
Well, and I'm like, listen, Google couldn't directly compete with Facebook. Like, blows my mind because, I mean, Google's pretty good at everything that they do. Yet,
Google Plus had some good ideas. We're not going to go down this rabbit hole, but it is, yeah. I mean, with the resources they had, to think that Google Plus didn't even make it, like, sure, like it'd be one thing if they came out and they're like, man, we never passed Facebook in daily active users, but it is a success. Like we do have users. No, it was like not even a success.
No, not at all.
And they could integrate it into everything, their maps, their Gmail, I mean, that should have been a surefire, which is probably why they did it, but
no, right. And it's just weird to think that now Elon's like, hey, we're not just going to take on, this Threads thing that's going on, but we're going to take on all these social media platforms. Apparently, we're going to take on Amazon and eBay. It just seems too much.
I would have to agree.
For a company that already has programmers fleeing it in droves. Like,
and not only that, I mean, I think Twitter has a few core things that it does really, really well. And I'm like, if you lose focus on those things, then you're probably going to ruin it.
Yeah, right.
Like you got to stay focused on its ability to gather news and cultivate what is going on right now in any community anywhere.
Exactly.
That's what it does best. And I don't know, it just seems like they're intent on like doing a totally different service. So I'm like, I mean, for $44 billion, I'm like, Elon Musk, I don't know if you had to buy Twitter if you're just going to change it all. Could have just started a new one.
Yeah, right. No, that's a good point.
Like, I don't even know. That's a lot of money to throw at that, but who knows? Maybe he is Elon Musk, so maybe he knows something I don't. But actually, he knows a lot of things I don't. So
But
be
he was
cool. I
not
mean,
at Comic-Con, so you do know that, and he doesn't.
yeah, I do know that at Comic-Con, D-Man and CP were there.
They were.
So, and we had a great time, man. So let's talk a little bit about Comic-Con. So this was my first Comic-Con, as I said last week on the show. And how many have you been to?
I've been to a few. We'll just leave it at that. I don't want to sound like a super nerd here. So I've been to a few.
Well, let's go ahead and out of the gate. I mean, what do you think were the major differences between this year and previous years? Because right now we do have the writers and the actors strike. So major studios and obviously the biggest stars also were not in attendance, like Elon. So, that is one major difference. But do you think there were any other things that really stood out to you?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I noticed was the fact that neither Marvel or DC were there in any presence at all, which baffles me. Obviously, we met people who worked at Marvel, we met
Mm-hmm.
comic book writers who worked for both brands, but neither were there in force. There was not really a Marvel booth or a DC booth on the floor where you could shop. They didn't make any large scale presentations. There were some smaller ones about specific lines, but it was like, hey, this is a panel about this Nightwing book or this Spider-Man series with this writer. So I
think
thought
maybe
that
was there a
really
Spider-Man
weird.
game? It was like
Yeah,
Spider-Man 2, the game or something that had a
yeah.
little bit of a presence.
But it was weird in the sense that neither of them were there to make big announcements to the comic book community who was at Comic Con. Because of that, the logistics of Comic Con were changed substantially, mainly Hall H. Hall H is typically the place to be where people line up for, at times, days to get in and get major announcements.
Mm-hmm.
And Hall H was insignificant, so much to the point that I had friends telling me that they walked into Hall H panels half an hour before the panels kicked off, which blows my mind because we're all used to having to wait a minimum of about 3.5 hours to get into anything in Hall H. So,
Well, the irony is when you think about it, I didn't go to a Hall H, but that's not because the line was so long and I didn't want to wait. It's because there really wasn't anything to go to. There was one that I wanted to, but we just got there. It was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one for the new Mutant Mayhem. And I remember you were like, D-Man, we got here too late. Like the line's probably too long. And then later your buddy was like, dude, I walked up like 15 minutes before. There was a little line, but I got in.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
that was
that
really the
was
only Hall H thing I wanted to see. So I didn't even make it.
so that was weird. And obviously, without the actors, the studios weren't going to take up Hall H space. I mean, what are you going to promote? You don't have the star power there. You couldn't bring the writers out in any capacity to talk about being writers. We did go to panels where there were, WGA members, and they pretty much said, hey, we can't really talk about our WGA official projects or what we were working on before the strike. We can only talk about things we did a long time ago or comic book related projects that we're here to talk about. So that was another big difference.
Well, and this is something that I experienced, but it only comparatively to previous years, which was, like you said, the logistics of Hall H. So the panels themselves were pretty packed, but when you were on the floor where all the merchandise, booths, and all that stuff was, it was literally like person to person. Like you are jam packed in there as you're trying to walk through the floor. And I guess I ended up talking to someone because we ended up going to this like little lounge area, and I was talking to someone, and she had mentioned that she's like, it seems a lot more packed, but usually every year there's a massive line of probably thousands of the people that are here, all waiting to get into Hall H, or they're either in Hall H. And she was like, so it actually kind of felt more crowded than I think it normally might, simply because people just weren't in those long lines like they normally would be.
So they were all walking around the floor. Yeah, that was the other big logistical difference from previous years that I noticed.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, I know me going for the first time, I noticed there's really like three main things to do when you're at Comic-Con. That's explore the floor. So there's like merchandise booths, there's an artist's alley, and then there's like the like kind of corporate booths where they're highlighting either things that might be upcoming, kind of museum-esque. They might have like like Lego statues. If it's Lego, they might have Star Wars props if it's Star Wars, things like that. And then
Yeah,
kind of like picture opportunities and stuff. And then there's like the announcement panels. So those are the ones where like the companies are coming and they're talking about what is either upcoming in the pipeline, or maybe like you said, normally probably bringing out some of their stars to do a Q&A or talk about their experience and stuff. And then there's just panels that are kind of like educational for basically like the comic book industry and media in general, where I guess it's more like education panels. You're going in there, you're trying to pick up some tips and tricks from the professionals, from the people who have done it, and maybe add those to your, practical job. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, I think, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I think one of the things I loved was I got to go around and take pictures with like all the cosplayers. And I probably seemed like a total Comic-Con newbie, because every time we saw someone cool, I'm like, CB, take my photo. And you did, which thank you. So that was a blast. And then so I got pictures with Power Rangers and Stormtroopers, Iron Man,
Ninja
Turtles, like the whole like I was all over. I was like, this is awesome. I did not see a lot of Batmans. Thought I was going to see more Batman, and he did not have a huge presence.
No, he did not.
Really, like Batman, Harley Quinn. I'm sure they've made their presence known at previous cons, and this one, I didn't see a lot of them.
No, not really.
Saw a lot of Green Ranger, Power Rangers, a lot of Spider-Man. Not as many, not as many Star Wars people as I thought. A lot of Jedis, but not a lot of like armored up people. A couple Mandalorians, that was cool. And those Mandalorians were awesome. Shout out to those guys. Those costumes looked great.
Yeah, it was very cool.
I really wanted to see a Boba Fett, like a Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett, but I didn't see one. I don't know if you did.
I did not. I was with you for most of the cons, so if you didn't see it, I probably didn't see it either.
So it was pretty cool. CP and I actually got a hotel room, which I don't know if you've ever stayed down there. It's kind of cool because we stayed a little bit up north and then drove down and took the trolley, which if you've ever been to San Diego, runs about halfway up, I think, the county, right? Something like that. Yeah. I don't know if it goes all the way to North County, but pretty convenient because then you don't have to pay for parking and it drops you off right there. So if you're ever going to the Comic-Con or San Diego Convention Center, you might want to consider it because those hotel prices and parking prices were pretty wild.
Yep. Parking is the worst, man. That's the worst part about Comic-Con, because not only, like, aside from paying $65 a day, it's just you can get down there and you might not even find parking.
Yeah, I think parking at the convention center was like 65 or $70. You could park further away in like a parking structure in the city, but it was still like $45, and then you had to walk 10 blocks.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, is that even worth it? It's still $50 and I got to walk now. So, and speaking of walking, I learned a lot about how out of shape I am by just walking around for three full days. I compare it to like if you've ever been to Disneyland. I've been to other conventions or like maybe a fair like the LA County Fair or something. You go for the day, right? And at the end of it, you're pretty tired, but you're like, all right, it's time to go. But like by day 3 of Comic-Con, I was like, I'm not just tired. Like my legs actually hurt. Like I had a blister on a toe on each foot. Like I was like, oh my gosh, dude, this is it's a lot. And then there's like, when you're at Comic-Con, there's like, I guess this is a thing, but it's like the Comic-Con smell of just like sweaty people.
Yep, especially down on that floor. Like my word of advice is if you go to Comic-Con, just avoid the floor. It is just a miserable place. I hate walking in it. And the worst part is obviously, you have friends. Not everyone is there for the whole 5 days,
Yeah.
And people are coming in and they're coming out and they're like, oh, hey, I just got in. Like, you want to walk the floor with me? And I'm like, honestly, I don't. I'm like, I got down to the floor the first day. I took pictures with the stuff I wanted to see. I visited the booths and bought the stuff I had to buy. And I was like, I never need to go down there again. But every day someone dragged me down there and I'm like, I just need better friends is what it comes down to, I guess.
CP, I got to give a big shout out to you because he knew something I didn't know and probably would have learned after the first day. But when you go to Comic-Con, or even for that matter, just any of the cons in general, you are allowed to bring a backpack. And in that backpack, You should bring at least one bottle of water that they have water fountains and you can refill at. Bring a phone charger, and I would honestly bring a wireless battery pack or whatever they call them, power pack or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You could bring some snacks because all of the like vendors there that deal in food, you're going to pay overpriced prices for a pretzel. You know, it's going to be like a $15 pretzel, you know, and then you got to wait in line, which if you have it
Mm-hmm.
in your backpack, you can just sit somewhere and pull it out and you're good to go. And then I would probably consider bringing some deodorant, just probably even
pass
for your own self.
pass it out to the other folks there. They might need it too.
Yeah. And so the other practical reason that is because, like CP said, when you walk the floor, you're going to find things that you want to buy, whether it's a t-shirt, whether it's whatever, and they'll give you a bag for that stuff, but you're going to have to carry it for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you bring your backpack, you can put anything that will still fit. If you have a good sized backpack, it'll go. And it's a lot easier to have that backpack than it is to carry that stuff with you everywhere. So thank you for making sure, CP, that I was prepared.
Well, when you're like, I don't know if I'm going to bring, I'm like, nope, bring it. You're going to want it. Trust me.
Yeah, I almost left it. I was like, do I really need it? Like, I don't want to wear it, but you do.
Yep. Yeah. So I got to ask you, obviously, we went to a lot of panels. Were there any that you particularly found valuable or surprising or anything like that?
Yeah, there was a story panel where a guy kind of broke down story structure, which was very fascinating. I took a lot of notes, some screenshots. I found what he had to say to be very practical, meaning a lot of what he was getting at could definitely be thoughtfully exercised when I go ahead and write new scripts and work on projects. So I thought
Okay,
that
that's
was
good.
great.
That's valuable.
Yeah, there was a panel on pitching
Mm-hmm.
that I thought was really good. And pitching meaning like, let's say you get your elevator pitch. And so this was in reference to anywhere from like a 30-second to a 2-minute pitch. How do you make sure you're prepared that if that opportunity ever presents itself, you know your product in and out and you can essentially buy yourself some more time?
Yeah.
And thought that was great. The guy had a really well prepared presentation and he was incredibly animated and fun to listen to. So he was not, what was the professor from Ferris Bueller's?
Oh,
Bueller.
Bueller.
Yeah, he was like, definitely, he kept your attention and was fun. He actually did this thing where anybody that showed up late, he had told everybody in the audience that he was going to call them out for being late. And he literally did. He would like jump up and down and then like point, and the whole crowd would be like, "You're late." So, which was fun because I mean, people kept coming in and out. So it wasn't like it happened once. It was like, no, it kept happening. And then it was funny because then he called out like it kept happening and everybody got, kind of over it. And then he like got everybody pumped again. So the next person like got shouted at, and then everybody had like a cool reaction. So that was fun. There was one panel I really enjoyed, which was just a Q&A, which I thought was great. I think, when you go to some of these panels and you have professionals who are doing this or have successfully done it in whatever niche role or industry that they're in most cases, this is actual comic books. So you're talking about writers, artists, editors, people who work at the big publishers and all that. I think we even there were people that were letterers and all kinds of different stuff in that industry. There was one that was a Q&A, which was great because people asked very practical questions that I think, sometimes what happens on these panels is, the moderators will start off their Q&A with something like, tell us about the first comic book that ever inspired you. And me personally, I'm like, I totally get why you would want to do that because it's going to connect you to the audience and all this. But I'm thinking in my mind, we have 1 hour with these guys. Like, I want their insight.
It's
I want to know.
We don't waste half an hour just getting to know them with these basic things that you could find reading someone's Wikipedia page or something.
Yeah, right. Like I feel like
in their bio
they're like,
somewhere.
They're like, oh, who inspired you? And they're like, it was, I loved Spider-Man. I'm like, I know, so did I. But like, how do I make it in comics? Like,
yeah, right.
Unless you got like some really cool origin story about what got you into comics, then it's like, well, it's just very generic question. So that, and then I feel like sometimes some of the panels, in order to kind of play down to the lowest common denominator, so the person who knows the least in the audience, sometimes the panels, like they would give presentations and they'd maybe read definitions, things like that. that kind of bothers me too, because I'm like, I don't really want you to go over anything that I can like Google myself.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
I
point.
want the insight. You can say words I don't know. I should be here. I should be here taking notes. If I'm not, then that's my own problem. And everybody has a phone, so they can all pull their phones out and go to your notes app. Like nobody can't write this down. If you don't, it's your fault. And I feel like you should be talking about the things that are either your personal experience or kind of what you would do, because you're the expert. So I want to be able to hear from you on anything that I'm like, I cannot go Google. There
Yeah,
is no YouTube video that gives me the advice that's coming from you directly. You'd
hmm,
have to hear it from you. And so
exactly.
I like the panels that are like that, and I like the questions, and that's why that Q&A I think worked well, was because people were just asking like, hey, if I wanted to get into this, how would I do it? And then, you might have two differing opinions up there, and that's fun. That's interesting. I
Yeah.
like that a lot. So yeah, I mean, all those panels, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I didn't see me personally, like I said, I didn't even go to Hall H because they didn't have any major announcements. And I think, I didn't get really a lot of, big, there wasn't like a panel where I'm like, oh my God, CP, like it was so cool. Like George Lucas was there. It was
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
Or, I can't believe we got to see firsthand what phase 5 looks like of the MCU.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
weren't those moments. There was actually a really cool one where they had special effects artists, and they
Mm.
kind of played this
Yeah.
game with the special effects artists where they would show clips from Doctor Who, which is apparently notoriously or known for its bad special effects.
Yeah.
So, or I mean, maybe not even bad, dated. We'll give it dated.
Yeah. Dated
We'll
special
give it
effects.
dated
Better.
special
Better way
effects.
to describe it.
Yeah. And it was really fun because, I mean, dude, these special effects artists, we're not talking about people who are trying to make it or this and that. I mean, they worked on the
The
projects.
biggest movies of all time,
Yeah, there was
Terminator
like
2, Independence Day,
Water World.
Waterworld.
No, I mean, seriously, though, that's like two movies. There's literally like between these five panelists, there was like 20 movies, and they are the movies that you still watch today. Like these were the special effects people. And it was fun because they just kind of like looked at clips from Doctor Who, and then they're like, how would you recreate that? And of course, they're dated effects. So it maybe not be the biggest challenge to recreate what was actually on screen, but it was a lot of fun to hear them, because essentially what they would do is they would give you the how they would do it, and then they would talk about where that came from. So because they'd be like, well, on Independence Day we had to do
Mhm.
this.
Or on Star Wars, this is how they ended up doing this technique. And you're like, whoa, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was fun. I actually enjoyed it. So ironically, like we were kind of mentioning earlier, a lot of the panels were stacked on top of each other, and I had to leave that one to go to the pitching panel, and I didn't want to leave. I was like, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. So,
Well, the guy from
what
that
about you?
panel,
Was
we're going
there?
to get on our show, BT Dubs. He will be on Filmmakers Compass at some point. I
Hell
already
yeah.
talked to him about it.
What about you? Anything that stood out?
Oh boy. Um, as far as the panels go, uh, we randomly went to this last minute panel. We weren't even sure if we were going to go, and I'm so glad we did. It was about mobile filmmaking. And I was
Ooh,
like, we work in the industry, we know something about filmmaking. But what I found great was the presenter was literally saying, hey, look, I did this shot with using this aftermarket app on a Google Pixel phone. I did it with the same aftermarket app on a iPhone 14. This is the difference. And he was talking about a lot of the add-on equipment that you could give to a cell phone to turn it into much more of a cinematic device. Because obviously, as he pointed out many times, he's like, look, at the end of the day, the limitations to cell phones are the sensors on them are really tiny. And when you buy a Blackmagic or a Red or an ARRI camera, you get bigger sensors, which means it has a better understanding of the light that it can let in, and it can get a much bigger depth of field. And that's
yeah,
it.
like dynamic range, I
And
think.
so
Yeah.
he's like, how do we take advantage of those things and compensate for the cell phone's small sensor? And these are some of the things that he provided. And I remember going to it and thinking, whatever. But I remember walking out of that presentation and going, oh my gosh, like I had no idea I could do those things on a cell phone that it just really reprogrammed my brain in the way that I think about production, which I thought was incredible. So I really enjoyed that presentation.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, I thought that guy was great because he got to the point. He showed us the equipment that he uses personally. He was like, "This is my setup. This is my experience." And
Mm-hmm.
then he talked about, some of the limitations, and he would talk about this is how I would do it,
Yep.
right? He would talk about like I would not film something in this lighting scenario, or if you have to be outside, maybe look for golden hour in the morning or the evening. Like,
Yep.
how do you take advantage of light so that you get the real cinematic effect that you're going for? And I thought he did a great job of the things that I wanted to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
So
another person, he was like, "Oh, if you don't know the definition, look it up." Like, boom,
yeah.
we're just going to move along. This is not for beginners. We're talking technology here. I thought that was great. I mean, the panels were fun, but I think the thing that I enjoyed most about Comic Con, D Man.
Which was
We, D Man and I, got to meet Walter Jones, the Black
oh
Power Ranger.
yes, that was amazing.
And not only did we meet him on the floor and actually talk to him and shake his hand, we had a friend of mine who knew him, made the introduction. So it wasn't just us going up and fanboying to him. We actually got to talk to him and via that kind of introduction. But then we saw him at an after party later that night, and that makes it all the more fun.
No, it was really cool. He was definitely a cool guy. He was having a lot of fun, like signing autographs and taking photos and doing the whole, kind of like celebrity autograph thing, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just surprised. I was like, I don't know how old he is because I remember like looking up to him when I was a kid. He's definitely shorter than I am now. So, but it was funny because I'm like, damn, I don't know how old you are, but you look good. He's a
Yeah,
good
right. He
looking
does
guy.
not look old at all.
Yeah, I was like, dude, you look exactly like the 90s Power Rangers show, honestly.
Yeah, it was pretty
Like,
incredible.
so that was a lot of fun. And then it was really cool. I really wanted to buy a t-shirt. And so we found this, I guess it's called like the Tower of Shirts. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's just this like, steel constructed wiring that goes all the way up to the ceiling. And then they just put shirts on there and you can pick out the one you want and they'll grab it for you. Well, it was funny because we finally found the Star Wars wall. I mean, we walked CP. I don't know how many steps we took, if you got an, Apple Watch or like a Fitbit, but it was a lot of steps to walk around this floor. And we finally got there. And I was like, I got to get a Star Wars shirt. Like, I have to. And sure enough, it was really funny because CP was like, oh, I already found it. And I was like, well, which one? And he's like, no, I want you to pick. Cause he's like, I already know if you find it, I know which one you're going to pick. And it ended up being that one. It was a shirt that it was basically R2D2 with the Star Wars logo as his body and then his like dome head at the top, which I probably should be wearing right now.
You'll probably wear it on multiple episodes, and
Yeah.
everyone will be like, "Wow, that's like the most D-man shirt I've ever seen."
No, it was funny because I was like, I'm looking, I was like, because I'm a big fan of A New Hope. So like they had the A New Hope like poster shirt, which I love, but I have that, I think. Like I've had that before if I don't anymore. And so that was one where it was kind of like, I don't know if I want to get that again. I've done it. I was looking for something maybe a little bit more unique, something that I couldn't find, just
Yeah,
any at the mall.
yeah.
Like what do they got that's really cool? So I thought it was funny though that you could point out the one I would get. And it was totally, I wore it the next day and it fit great. And I was like, I love it. I'll wear this all the time.
Check some pictures of D-man at Comic-Con. You'll see the shirt. Just leave it
Well,
like that.
speaking of seeing the Black Power Ranger at a party, we also did attend some parties, which is a big part of Comic-Con, which is the afterlife or the after hours party life. And that takes place in the Gaslamp district of San Diego, which if you've ever been there is incredible. I mean, it's restaurants, bars, clubs,
Hotels.
and then there's shopping and stuff in there too. But if you're after hours, a lot of that might be closed. But even during the day, you can go hit those places, and it was a lot of fun. So one of the things I had to bring up was CP had mentioned that we should walk 10 blocks to go to a burger joint called Hodad's, which apparently they have 2 locations down in San Diego, and it's a staple of that area. So we go, and this burger is massive. I mean, I love In-N-Out, and I always get a double animal style, and like that is enough for me. This, I don't want to say it was 2 doubles, but it might have been in total weight. Like this burger was huge. And I'm literally like, I mean, both width and length. Like I had to like take a massive bite to get it all. And then I ate like half of it and I was like, I am done. But I'm also not a little bitch. So I did finish it. And yeah, I ate the whole burger. I don't know how good I felt about myself after, but I did enjoy the burger. So thank you for taking me there. It was pretty cool too. I ended up after I ate the burger, of course, I had to go number two. So while I was in the bathroom, they started playing all these songs for all the cosplayers, and
Oh God.
you said it was pretty cool, right? Like I don't know.
It was awesome. Like Peach came in from Mario and they played the Peaches song from the movie. And Captain Jack Sparrow came in, so they played the Pirates of the Caribbean theme. And a Jedi came in, and they started off playing the A New Hope scene, the epic Star Wars music. And then a Sith walked in, and so they swapped over to the Imperial March. It was pretty sweet.
That's
They're having a
awesome.
good time,
Yeah.
obviously. I mean, there's
Well,
cosplayers all over San Diego.
I just love to see a restaurant just having fun with it.
Mhm.
Like, hey, this is happening. I mean, we can either just embrace it or, pretend like it's not going on. But it's like, no, I like to see them having fun with it. That's really cool.
Yeah, right.
So even though I missed it taking a shit.
Thank you. So as D-Man mentioned, we were at parties. So one of the invite parties that we went to was the Comic Book Legal Defense Funds gala. And it was kind of an interesting night. We went not knowing who we'd run into, and we ended up meeting Daryl from Run DMC.
Run DMC.
Run
Amazing.
DMC.
I'm not even gonna lie. I literally had just been watching an 80s documentary on Disney Plus called like, I don't know, I Love the 80s or something. And he was in it. And then I saw him for real. And you know what? He looks just like he does in the documentary.
And he was totally cool. He has his own comic book company. He was there. He kind of gave this off the cuff speech about the importance of comic books and literature and, discourse. And I was quite amazed at how good he was speaking off the cuff. But the thing that really amazed me is he just had such swagger and charisma. And you're like,
also,
I get why this guy was so cool and so successful back in the day.
I mean, this is coming off weird now because I'm talking about guys, but also looked really good. I think we had to look up his age because we were like, that guy has to be 60 something. Because I mean, Run DMC is from the 80s and he was already at the minimum, he was a teenager when that happened. But I don't even know if I was born yet. So I was like, I don't know what he's got on me, but it ends up, I think he's like 58 or 59.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had to Google it. We were like, I got to know.
And so we went up to him, we got pictures with him, and we asked him to, check out our comic book. And he said that he would. So that's fantastic.
The only thing I got to say too is when we were at that party, they had two bars, but for whatever reason, the bartenders were taking forever, And so I had to wait in line for like an hour for a drink. And CP, you're going to hate me for this, but I started getting like 3 drinks at a time. Just went all in on like, hey, let's maximize how long I waited. So I'm like, give me a beer and 2 doubles. And then it ends up that I come back like the 3rd time and CP's like, did you do that every time? And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty drunk right now. So, and then before we move on from the parties, I just wanted to say that it was really funny at the other party. I just got my drinks. Like at this place, the bar was like wicked fast. They were great. So I walk out and there's a group of people trying to take a selfie.
I still can't believe that this happened, by the way.
Yeah. It's like a big group.
Story.
Yeah, it's like a big group of people. So they're like, they hold their hand out like they're going to, take it. But I was like, I don't think they're going to get everybody in there. So I go up. I'm just like, hey, would you guys like me to take a photo? Just being polite. And they're like, yeah, sure. That would be great. So I take the photo, all of that. And it ends up that the guy who was the head of the group or whatever, he comes up. He's like, hey, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And he puts his hand out and he's like, Dustin. And I was like, yes. And he's like, no, I'm Dustin. And I was like, no, I'm Dustin. And so he's like, what? So we both pulled out our IDs.
They pulled out their IDs to prove they were both Dustins.
So this guy's like, this is amazing. I'm buying you a drink. So he buys me a drink. The whole night, he's like coming up to me, high five when he walks by, like totally cool. And then it ends up He's like a huge comic book creator.
Yeah, when he tells us, he's like, "Oh, I met that dude Dustin." We're like, "What? You know that Dustin?" Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, so I met him. It was awesome. He took a photo with me.
I know. I know.
Yeah, it was
Insane,
pretty
dude.
cool. Pretty cool. So I had a blast, CP. I just want to say thank you again for you know, setting everything up and making it a great memorable experience. It was fun.
Glad you enjoyed it. Comic Con is a great time, and I'm looking forward to next year, man.
Well, while we were down there, we also went to see the movie Oppenheimer, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show. So now, CP, before we head out, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Oppenheimer. So this is the moment that I all warned you guys about. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
We are going to be talking the movie in its entirety, and we are not going to hold back. So I just wanted to let everybody know if you want to take off now, I totally understand. And go ahead and timestamp this and come back. So CP, I'm going to throw it over to you. What are your initial thoughts on Oppenheimer?
Well, I mean, all right, let's consider all the facts here. First of all, this is a movie by Christopher Nolan. I've not really found a bad one by him yet. The casting is
Yeah, he's awesome.
incredible. Some of the biggest stars in Hollywood, some of my favorite actors are in this movie. So I mean, I really enjoyed it.
I found it interesting. It actually, to me, mirrored the story structure of The Social Network, which is essentially they have two depositions taking place at different times, kind of. But the movie's told essentially through flashbacks or or the third person perspective of whoever's being deposed.
Mm-hmm.
Or and so that reminded me a lot of the structure of the Social Network, even though
Yeah.
both of those it's Zuckerberg that's being deposed. Here it's two different people.
Mm-hmm.
It's Oppenheimer and Strauss.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I thought it worked really well. It kept the pace going on a 3 hour movie, which can be hard to do. I mean, I don't want to say the movie felt long. I mean, 3 hours, you could definitely tell by the end, it was like, all right, this has been a long time that we're here. But because they kept kind of jumping between like the actual deposition and then the two perspectives, it felt like the pace was fairly good.
Well, what I think blew my mind is how much the movie really jumped around Oppenheimer's life. It starts out with him younger and it goes all the way up through, when he's older in his life. And it really covers a massive amount of time very quickly.
Yeah, I will say I don't know that it was a in-depth kind of character study. The movie has a theme which has to do with power
Mm-hmm.
and how much power is too much power. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they really like frame his life around that theme.
Mm-hmm.
So the moments and things in his life that have to do with that were of importance, but it wasn't that we really got into the intricate details of Oppenheimer's life per se. It was only kind of how it affected that. So the plot of the movie itself is that Oppenheimer is being deposed to have his security clearance taken away from his work, which he got his security clearance for his work developing the first atomic bomb, Trinity, which was tested in the film in a grandiose scene,
Oh my
which was
gosh.
incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah. So, and that's the only bomb going off, literally in the movie. You don't see the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, but the movie itself is thematically dealing with the fallout of essentially like if we drop these bombs, are we going to create a nuclear arms race and destroy the world?
Oh, and
Right.
spoiler alert, they do create a nuclear armed race and almost destroy the world, just in case you didn't, pay attention to history class.
Yeah. So that's not only the premise, that is the movie, and it hangs around that deposition. But I wanted to say that the acting performances, particularly of Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr., were absolutely out of this world. But I thought everybody in the film was bringing their A game here. It was
Mm-hmm.
like everybody knew they were in something special and were all going to bring it. And you could feel it. Everybody kind of had their little moment to shine. And there were actors from all over the place. I mean, like you said, it's a long list of Hollywood stars that were, willing to take maybe a smaller role to be in a Nolan film. And everybody did a great job.
Like Remy Malik has like a minuscule part, but you're like, dude, you could have had as big a role in this movie as you want, but he's literally in it for like 5 lines.
Yeah, there's the actor from like Drake and Josh. I think
Oh yeah.
Josh.
Yeah, you're right.
I think his name's Josh Peck. Is that his name?
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, he's in the movie. He actually is like in one scene. He's in a very important scene. He's kind of a pivotal character. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was really cool. I thought, yeah, everybody did a great job. What was there? Florence Pugh is in the movie.
Emily Blunt
Uh,
is in the movie.
Emily Blunt does a great job. Yeah,
Matt
I mean, it was
Damon. Yeah.
one of the things that stands out though was the sound design. I think Nolan's known for his kind of like bellicose, loud,
Yeah.
themes, and
Yeah.
that's there. It is there. That's not that it's not there. It's a different composer. I can't remember his name at the moment than his usual collaborator, who I think is Hans Zimmer.
He's normally, yeah, normally Hans Zimmer does his movies.
So sorry about that, but I thought the score actually, because it's a talkie movie, I mean, it's literally a lot of people in rooms talking heads, shots and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he did a pretty good job because there's two things that really stood out to me. Is one, he was able to dial it down when the dialogue was on. So
Yeah.
it was, bellicose and grandiose when it needed to be, but when they were talking, I thought it worked well. But they do keep the music going, and this seems intentional to match the pace
Yeah.
so that the music carries over from one scene to the next scene, and it almost feels like they're all part of the same segment, when really if you change the music, that could feel like a very abrupt change.
Yeah.
And
That's a
instead they
good
kind
point.
of run it over, and I thought it worked really well for the pace. Now, CP, I had one thing I wanted to ask you about. Earlier in the film, Oppenheimer's having these kind of like flashes of, like, I think an atomic,
He's like
like
thinking
cutting an
molecularly, right?
yeah, like
Yeah.
cutting an atom in half, and the explosion of it. Did you find that to work? I kind of thought it was maybe a little
I
interrupting.
think the problem was it's kind of as at the points where sort of it takes place in the beginning of the movie where Oppenheimer is really becoming exposed to quantum mechanics and he starts developing his quantum theory. And I actually really liked it at that part because Oppenheimer did so much for the field of quantum mechanics. But the problem is all of a sudden it just sort of stops maybe a quarter of the way through the movie and we don't ever go back to it. And I think that it was kind of an interesting insight into the character of Oppenheimer and putting the film truly in his kind of first person perspective. And so as soon as we lose that, it's gone and it's just a third person movie. And my one complaint about the movie is we don't really get a lot of depth into Oppenheimer, especially his relationships with other people. His relationships with his good friends, his colleagues, even his wives are very like superficial. It
Yeah.
is truly his relationship with the bomb is the relationship in the movie. And
Interesting.
so not having that kind of first person to connection to him once they sort of do away with that, I felt was kind of detrimental to his character study.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting. I actually did note in my, I kind of, if you want to check it out on Twitter or x.com, I did kind of give my thoughts. And one of my bullet points was literally like not as personal as I thought it would be. It really is like his relationship with the science and then the fallout of what they accomplished, both good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really carried the movie. One of the things that was really great, and I think a biopic or a historical like war film, anything like that, I thought this movie definitely made me want to go to Wikipedia and learn more about the actual history of what happened,
Yeah.
which is
I
great.
think
I
no, I
think
think that
that's
was good.
something any movie like that should, inspire you to do, is be like, wow, I can't believe all this happened. And it ends up that a lot of what is in the film is actually true. So
Mm-hmm.
like Albert Einstein shows up. Strauss actually does turn on Oppenheimer because he embarrassed him at a hearing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of things that you're like, holy cow! Like, he did literally have his security clearance revoked over Strauss double crossing him.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess JFK ends up being one of the people in Congress that does not vote for Strauss to be appointed the energy secretary or whatever job he was trying to get. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess that was true. That was
Mm-hmm.
noted and kind of big, and he kind of did make a name for himself. So all those things were interesting. I really liked Matt Damon's character. He was kind of like a no nonsense military general, and he to Oppenheimer they kind of had a little bit of the comedic beats. I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they had the witty dialogue between them, but that was really where you found some of the humor in the film because it's not Nolan's. It's definitely not his funniest movie.
No, but also I think part of it is what you're getting at is once the few dynamic relationships that we really actually see explored in the movie. You know,
Yeah.
Oppenheimer has more interaction with his military counterpart as they're developing the Manhattan Project than literally anyone else in the film.
So I do have just two questions before we move on because we've been talking a lot this episode, but we had a lot to say, and it's our podcast, so we'll do what we want. But one of the things I just wanted to ask you about CP, the theme of kind of will we destroy ourselves? It's a universal theme that still resonates. Do you think Nolan got home the point that he was trying to make?
I think he absolutely did. Obviously, it's funny because you know, and we've talked about this on the podcast. You know, if you pay attention to anything we post on social media, obviously this is something D-Man and I are very aware of and passionate about. But the arguments that they're making regarding the nuclear arms race in Oppenheimer are the very same arguments that are being made today regarding AI.
Mm-hmm.
Word for word, like, oh, if we don't do this, then these people will have the advantage over us. Like it literally, you just swap out the words artificial intelligence with nuclear, you know, hydrogen bomb, and it's the same conversation. So incredibly insightful from Nolan. And I think it's not missed on us as the audience, but also having this film come out at this time and place in world history where we're watching events unfold. And for the last year, people are asking the question, is Vladimir Putin going to use nukes? You can't help but think about that when you're watching this movie about the nuclear age. Is the birth of the nuclear age, and that is not lost on an audience. So, way to go, Nolan.
Yeah, I have to say I really agree. I thought the theme was hit home, and I thought there was even really a great scene where Oppenheimer he gets into the Oval Office to talk to, is it President Truman?
Truman, yeah.
Yeah. And he literally said he kind of admits his guilt associated with, his participation at Los Alamos and in the Manhattan Project. And the president is like, boo hoo, I'm the one who decided to drop the bombs and I'm the one with the blood on my hands. So I think at one point he's actually quoted as saying, like, get this crybaby out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not out of here. I think he says, don't let that crybaby back in here
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. CP, I can't quote it then, but something like that. And apparently I looked up that too. That is also true. He was, people in the room were quoted as saying he did say something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And it really diminished Oppenheimer's stock. But yeah, when it comes to the theme, obviously he had tremendous guilt around that. And there's this scene with Albert Einstein that the movie really hinges on. So it happens early in the movie and then at the end, which I won't ruin that for anybody, I guess, but not fucking I will. Essentially, Oppenheimer does ask the question, when we launched the bomb, we thought we might destroy the world. And he's like, I think we did, meaning that the arms race itself, eventually we will be the, authors of our own demise or architects of our own demise. And so then to that end, this is like a very, very powerful cautionary tale that resonates really, really well today. Because like CP said, there are threats out there that it's like we could destroy ourselves. Absolutely. And I thought Nolan, in that sense, absolutely nailed it.
But it doesn't come off as preachy. It doesn't come out of this, it comes off in a very thought-provoking way where Nolan poses these questions to an audience and you can't help but think about it as you walk out. In a way that's why Nolan's a great storyteller. He's not making propaganda. He's making a story that's making us think. He's not preaching to us an idea. And that's the difference.
And it does work like that. Now I have two more questions, one about the movie and then just a final little one. I got a couple people asking me specifically if they should go see this movie in the theaters and even more specifically in an IMAX theater. And I wanted to get your opinion, CP, because this is heavy on dialogue, a lot of talking heads, a lot of people in rooms. This isn't Interstellar or Inception, where there's so much happening on screen all the time that it's like it needs your full attention on the biggest screen possible. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, you know me. Obviously, I'm a proponent that you should see every movie in the theater, especially a Christopher Nolan movie. And the nuclear bomb sequence is incredible
Yeah, it's
on the big
spectacular.
screen. It is just this visceral, the explosion is incredible. And it's all done in silence. And then after we witness the explosion, we feel the impact of the concussion wave that follows it, and it is visceral, it is exciting, it is so intense. That alone makes it worth going to see in the theater. Now, I'm going to tell you, and don't let Christopher Nolan know I said this, I don't actually think you need to go see it in IMAX or 70 millimeter. Point is, most of the movie just isn't at such a grand scale that I don't think it warrants it. Now, maybe when you go see Dune Part 2, go see that on IMAX. But I don't really think that this is a movie you have to see in IMAX to experience it and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think my response to that question was like, if you're looking at, say, like The Social Network and Top Gun Maverick, which one should you see in the theater? You're like, of course, Top Gun Maverick, right? That doesn't mean you shouldn't go to the theater when you can. And if you want to see the movie, I would recommend you go. I'm a theater guy. Everybody knows that listens. Like, I want to see it in the theater. But if you're asking me, like, oh, do I need to? I don't know if you need to. Um, it's a great movie, and I would recommend you do. But otherwise, yeah, I think you might as well go to the theater. So that's just my 2 cents. Now, finally, CP, throw it over to you.
All right.
What's your rating out of 10?
Ooh. Um, Obviously it's a subject that I'm very interested in. I spent part of my time, a lot of time in grad school talking about similar stuff. So I was interested in it. I would probably give it an 8 or a 9. It's not my very favorite Christopher Nolan movie, but like objectively as a movie, it is a well-made movie. It is a well-acted movie. It is an entertaining movie. Am I going to
I
rewatch it like I do The Dark Knight? No, but it's worth
I,
seeing.
ha- I have to agree with you. I went with 9 out of 10. And I mean, Nolan, I mean, his list of films, I mean, he's got a lot of nines for me. Inception's a 9, Interstellar's a 9, Dark Knight's a 10. Like he's nailed it. And here he is taking on a biopic now, a different genre that I don't know that
Mm-hmm.
he's fully explored before. And I feel like in his style, he totally knocked it out of the park. And I thought he made a great movie. I was very entertained, like you said. It was thought provoking. It had a few moments that, like you said, were truly worthy of that big screen. And I just think I'll rewatch it. Like I'm not gonna rewatch it as much as The Dark Knight or Inception, but I mean I'll definitely watch it again. And I'd put it on the same level for me personally as something like The Social Network, which it does follow that structure, which is why I'm comparing it to that. But I also really love that movie. It's similarly well written and fast paced. I think I gave Social Network a 9 out of 10. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're about right there for me. They're even. I think I asked you after the movie which one you liked more, and you said Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I liked Oppenheimer better.
So there you go. Well, I know CP. We talked a lot this week, but we actually had a lot to talk about. So it was a pretty eventful week, and I'm so glad that we got to go to the movies. That's you know Well, the reason I say that is because I mean there were so many things we were trying to fit in while we were down at Comic-Con that we
No,
didn't
we actually
go.
skipped going to the Eisners, everyone, to go see Oppenheimer. So just
Yeah,
know we were dedicated to seeing this.
right. I was just glad we got to go because I was like, at one point, I was like, I don't think, like, we literally were up at like 1 a.m. talking about the next 2 days. And I was like, CP, I don't think there's enough time. This is a 3 hour movie.
Mm-hmm.
That means we got to have at least probably like a 4.5 hour block somewhere
Yeah, right.
to get to the theater and do the whole thing. I'm like, yeah, it's going to take a sec. So I was really glad that happened. But I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoyed our experiences, down at Comic-Con and our review of Oppenheimer. So, like I said earlier, catch us on x.com. Yeah, we'll be there. But no, thank you everybody for all of your kind comments about our photos and our adventures down in Comic-Con. And if you have any questions or anything's, interesting to you and you just want to share your thoughts, be sure to continue the conversations. We always love hearing from you guys. So you can find all of our social media and past episodes at filmmakers.com, filmmakerscompass.com. You could follow me at Big Kid D-Man and CP.
You can follow me at NDCal5. Thanks for hanging out this week and talking Comic-Con and movies with us. See Oppenheimer. Let us know your thoughts. Until then, we will see you back here next week and keep watching movies.